showed some transparency on what we were going to discuss in this hearing, as we're required to do. Some tried to tell me I was all wet and I was moving in the wrong direction, and that things are wonderful, and the growth rate is phenomenal, and that everything is under control. And what we're hearing today is that's not accurate. What we're hearing today is that's not accurate. This is hurting you more than anybody, Bangladesh. What we're about is trying to shed some light on what the truth is. What is the truth? What's the truth, and what can America do to help improve the lives of the people of Bangladesh? And that's what this is about.
The thing that struck me is that this was shortly before the election, and my understanding was the polling was showing that Khalida Zia was likely to win the election, but ultimately, they couldn't come to an agreement, and it seemed to be over the issue of a caretaker government. A lot of times in the past, there had been a caretaker government that took over, the elections were held so that you could make sure that one side or the other wasn't being unfair with the other side. And it seemed to work relatively well, but this time that didn't happen. So we see what we saw after the elections. I was actually a bit surprised that the violence wasn't even more after the election.
The issue that's at hand right now in Bangladesh is that the situation is so chaotic, and there is so much unknown, and there are so many people that feel lost and discouraged, that Bangladesh is turning into basically a breeding ground, if you will. And so, as an American citizen, outside of business, as an American citizen, that scares me to death. That absolutely scares me to death, and it scares me for my friends and whom I would call family, that I have extended family in Bangladesh, because it's so easy. It's so easy when you're falling on tough times and you're discouraged.
Dr. Ayers, I think you had wanted to add some comment on this.
I just wanted to say that I do think it's probably difficult to ascertain what percentage of the general population has a more radical view, and certainly Bangladesh has not been a radical country. It has been a place of great moderation.
Ms. Gabbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just ask one follow-up subject matter. I understand that Bangladesh's Rapid Action Battalion has been effective in counterterrorism efforts, but that they've also been known to be used by the government to attack political opponents. So I'm wondering if you can comment on how you can reach both objectives of curtailing the abuse of power, but also recognizing if this is an effective asset to counter these extremist elements. How do you see that playing out?
If you don't mind, I'll just make one quick comment. As it pertains to whether it's the Rapid Action Battalion or the military or even just the police. The police itself, generally speaking, from my understanding, is trained and funded here in the U.S., so by U.S. taxpayer dollars. Okay. A lot of the military is as well. The RAB, I believe, is done through the UN and heavily funded by the U.S. I wanted to give you an example. I was leaving a hotel in Chittagong, the Peninsula Hotel in Chittagong, one year, and it had in my van on the way to the factory 2 people from one of the largest retailers in the world. One of the members of RAB, and you can clearly see them, they're in a blue uniform, it says RAB on the back of them, and I've been told that the elite of the elite out there took and beat the living you-know-what out of a normal, ordinary citizen because he crossed the street at the wrong time. Well, the buyers that was sitting next to me was like, what the was that? And I'll apologize. let's discuss it a little bit later. And I'll tell you, it wasn't 3 months later that those buyers were barred from traveling to Bangladesh anymore. And so it's a very serious concern.
Yeah.
And I indirectly, we as Americans have
Are
an impact
affected.
indirectly in how that happens.
Dr. Rios?
In terms of RAB's record, human rights records is very poor, absolutely abysmal, that we need to take into account. And given the circumstances, the most important element is accountability. Unless the force, or for that matter, any force, is accountable. And that you cannot tie in simply, one institution cannot be accountable when the whole system is not accountable. Right. And this is how it is, in some ways connected to each other. Overall point, that's why, is an accountable governance that is necessary, that would ensure that this kind of heavy-handedness or RAB's poor record of human rights abuse can be addressed to institutional arrangement. Solution is to build an institution which Bangladesh has not succeeded yet. Thank you.
Mr. Fleischle, I'm going to ask my question directly at you. As some of the witnesses have noted, the World Bank estimates that the unrest in Bangladesh has had a cumulative negative effect of nearly $2 billion in just the last few years alone.
After 2012, it started to dwindle down. The past 2 years, it's dropping dramatically.
How do they keep that growth rate as 6.2% GDP growth rate with the dwindling?
To be honest, I have no idea.
Do you believe the numbers?
No.
Okay.
I would say that the Hindu community also noted the severe security failings that had taken place by the Awami League government, as well as by police forces in protection in the run-up to the election of 2013 and 2014, as well as Washiqur Rahman and Avijit Roy were killed in broad daylight with police very close nearby. Avijit Roy was killed at the Dhaka Book Fair, and police were within walking distance away. And when a machete-wielding assailant is killing you, it takes time. It's not a gunshot, and therefore the security forces failed. So the Awami League should not simply rely on the Hindu community as a vote bank, because that is not their role. Their role is to protect all Bangladeshi citizens if they are in government, and the same with the BNP or any other party that's in power.
Any other comments?
Just a quick one on Avit Joy. There's actually a picture that I saw on the internet where Avit Joy was on the ground and the event was occurring, and there was a police officer standing right there doing nothing.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing.
Thank you. Ms. Kurtz, did you have one?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one last comment. It was raised earlier, the suggestion of declaring the Jamaat-e-Islami a foreign terrorist organization, and I think that would be extremely unhelpful. The Jamaat-e-Islami has participated in the electoral process. They have tended not to receive a great deal of votes. I think it was 4 to 5% in the last election that they ran in 2008. But the point is that certainly those guilty of violence should be prosecuted. But there is simply no indication that the Jamaat-e-Islami as a political party has engaged in terrorism, systematic terrorism.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I think really the only way that you're going to get a teeter in the right positive direction is if we, as the United States, step in and play a bigger part in helping bring both parties of the government, or I should say the government and the opposing party, together to clean the slate and start fresh. and get free and fair elections up and running and turned Bangladesh back into a democratic society. It's not, it's not a democratic society. It's falling apart.